Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the source material you trust us with, the articles, the research, the deep cut analysis, and deliver a streamlined understanding, ensuring you leave this conversation thoroughly informed, never overwhelmed.
Today, we're peeling back the layers on a chapter often overshadowed by the major battles and dramatic captures that surround it.
That's right.
We are stepping into the subtle yet, I think, incredibly profound landscape of Journey to the Crossroads, Book 4, Chapter 7 of the Two Towers.
Yeah, and for so many readers, this chapter can feel like, well, like just a bit of travelogue. It's the continuation of Frodo and Sam's tense walk toward Mordor after, they've just escaped the clutches of Faramir.
Exactly. It feels like a connecting piece of tissue in the narrative.
But our source material confirms that this seemingly quiet movement is absolutely foundational to Tolkien's entire moral and thematic architecture. It's anything but quiet when you look closely.
Okay, let's unpack this. This chapter seems quiet on the surface, but it's loaded with a kind of meaning that really dictates everything that follows.
So what's our mission today? What are we trying to pull out of it?
Our mission is to move beyond the simple plot points. They went from A to B and really extract the layers of thematic resonance, the character development, and the moral complexity contained within.
We need to analyze how Tolkien uses this moment to balance that physical progress with this deep moral reflection.
And especially considering that enduring tension of maintaining hope when you are literally walking into the shadow of Mordor.
And we absolutely must, we have to dedicate a big chunk of our time to the elephant in the room, or perhaps the noble ranger at Henneth Noon.
Oh, yes.
Which is the massive, still raging controversy surrounding Faramir's depiction when this chapter was adapted for the big screen.
Decades later, and people are still debating it with the same passion.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So did Peter Jackson betray a character, or did he humanize him? That's the core question we're going to get into.
Right. So we're defining the core structure of our deep dive right now. First, we'll look at the literal and symbolic journey itself.
Then, the persistent glimmers of hope that Tolkien sprinkles in.
Third, that detailed breakdown of the Faramir book-to-movie controversy.
And finally, what can we take away from it? The enduring narrative lessons we can extract from it all.
Sound like a plan?
Let's begin where Frodo and Sam begin this chapter, in the immediate aftermath of that tense, high-stakes encounter with Faramir and his men at the hidden refuge of Henneth Noon.
Right. The window of the sunset.
Exactly. So they're moving south. The sources describe this leg of the journey as a perilous trek through the wilds of Ithilien toward the absolute edge of enemy territory.
And that physical movement south is perhaps the most crucial element Tolkien is detailing here. As always with Tolkien, he is never just describing a hike, right?
No, never. Every step has meaning.
He is utilizing the physical movement to explore the landscape simultaneously on two critical levels, the literal and the symbolic. You really can't understand the moral weight of the Hobbit's decision without understanding the geography.
So we're not just mapping a route on a piece of paper. We're mapping the psychological and spiritual state of Middle-earth as they get closer and closer to the war zone.
Precisely. On the physical level, Ithilien is defined by its contradictions. It's the last remnant of Gondor's control. It's their eastern frontier. But it is also deeply scarred and compromised.
The sources describe these rolling hills, gentle rivers, and patches of sunlight filtering through the trees, which, that sounds almost peaceful.
It does. But these remnants of beauty are constantly contrasted with the decay of the ancient Númenórean civilization.
That decay is so significant, isn't it? It's not just wilderness, it's a fallen civilization. You can feel the history.
You feel it in the stones. Ithilien was once a garden, a beautiful land facing east. But now, they're moving past these half-ruined watchtowers, crumbling stone, and roads that are clearly neglected or worse, used by the enemy.
So the physical details hint at this lingering, heartbreaking beauty, yes, but also a pervasive sense of loss.
A civilization actively receding as they approach the enemy's territory. The journey isn't just physically arduous, it's a constant visual reminder of what has been lost in the war. Every ruin is a ghost.
And how does that physical detail translate into the symbolic landscape? You mentioned two levels.
Well, the symbolic landscape is this world where danger and hope exist simultaneously in a desperate tension. They are physically drawing nearer to the greatest evil. Mordor is now palpably close, yet the environment itself refuses to be totally desolate.
It's still fighting back.
It's not the lifeless ash of the Morgai. It's still alive, still resisting in its own way. Every path they take carries profound risk, yet these small signs of life prevent total despair.
So the environment becomes a kind of mirror of Frodo's internal state. He's carrying the ultimate evil, the ring, yet he still possesses the hope and duty to finish the task.
That coexistence of beauty and blight, of good and evil contending for control of the land, is what makes their choice to continue meaningful.
I see. If the land were already completely consumed by shadow, the quest would almost seem futile, wouldn't it?
It would. The symbolic landscape reminds the reader that even when darkness is overwhelming, the battle is still being fought, molecule by molecule, on the surface of the world.
And this leads us to the chapter's core motif, the crossroads itself. This is obviously far more than just a road junction.
Absolutely. The crossroads in Tolkien's work, and in ancient mythology generally, is an incredibly potent symbol. It's never just a place to turn left or right.
For Frodo and Sam, it is a literal junction, though. They have to choose between safer, circuitous paths and the dangerous, direct path that Gollum is promising.
The path that leads straight to Cirith Ungol.
The choice of route is literally the choice of fate.
It is, and this physical junction mirrors the larger moral and emotional decisions not only for the hobbits, but for every character who crosses their path, notably Faramir. It represents forks in fate.
Can you expand on the crossroads site itself, the statue?
Yes, the statue.
Yep.
It's a decaying statue of an ancient king of Gondor, which has been defiled by the orcs. They've knocked the head off and scrawled graffiti on it, but it's still standing.
It's a place where history, the current conflict, and all these future decisions just collide.
And that decaying monument, the statue of the ancient king, is a brilliant touch of technical storytelling. It solidifies the weight of Gondor's entire history on this one small decision they have to make.
It connects their tiny, immediate tactical choice. Which way do we walk next to the long sweep of history?
And that's what the decaying Númenórean architecture does throughout this section. It serves as a silent moral compass. Are they upholding the legacy of these ancient kings? Or are they allowing their path to be dictated by the shadows who have defiled the king's memory?
So the physical act of choosing a path under that kind of pressure, knowing the enemy is so close, forces the characters to constantly reinforce their moral resolve.
Yes. Their physical choice reflects their moral choice to uphold their mission, regardless of the personal cost. The literal journey south becomes a test of psychological and moral endurance, framed by the ruins of a great empire.
And that's why this section is so vital and, like you said, shouldn't just be rushed over as travel.
No, Tolkien is using the environment to heighten the stakes. Every hill climbed and every ruined watchtower passed reinforces the weight of the ring and the proximity of the inevitable conflict.
The symbolic crossroads reminds you that every single decision, be it trusting Gollum or resisting the urge to turn back, is a life-or-death moral navigation against the backdrop of historical decay.
The ground itself holds the memory of Gondor's fall, increasing the pressure on the hobbits to succeed.
It's a fascinating narrative paradox, then. Despite moving into what is effectively the last line of defense before Mordor, a place defined by decay and military tension, Tolkien deliberately injects these specific moments of lightness and hope.
He does.
So why? When the tension should be building to an unbearable degree, why does he offer these glimmers of light?
I think it's because if the world were entirely desolate, entirely ash and ruin, the quest would cease to be about preservation and become purely a task of destruction, driven only by a sense of duty.
It would just be an act of negation.
Exactly. Tolkien is meticulously balancing the narrative. The existence of hope, even in the smallest form, justifies the entire mission. It gives them something to fight for, not just against.
What are some of the specific textual evidences of this resilience that our sources point to?
Well, we see the sight of birds in the sky, which is a direct contradiction to the suffocating, birdless oppression that surrounds Mordor.
Right, the fell beasts have driven everything else away.
We see green growth, patches of unblighted nature, and traces of friendly men and animals who are still utilizing the land. These are not just decorative descriptions, they are critical evidence of resistance. Life is stubborn.
It's a subtle but profound use of contrast and color, isn't it?
Yeah.
The very colors of life, green and blue, are fighting back against the monolithic black and gray of the shadow.
That's a critical distinction. Tolkien uses color with profound moral significance. The specific elements he details, the flight of a bird, the shimmer of water in the sun, are signs that Gondor's lands, though scarred by war and the long siege of the shadow, are not entirely consumed.
So if the life force of the natural world still manages to persist, if things still grow.
Then there is still a memory of goodness imprinted on the land, and the fight is still viable. There's still something worth saving.
And this ties directly back to Frodo's psychological state. Carrying the ring is fundamentally a corrupting and depressing task. He's constantly viewing the world through a lens of suspicion and pain.
Yes.
So how does the sight of enduring hope affect him specifically?
For Frodo, who is suffering so immensely under the physical and psychological burden of the ring, these sights provide a necessary link to external reality. The ring wants to isolate him.
It focuses the bearer inward on power and desire and paranoia.
Exactly. So seeing genuine, external, non-hostile life forces him momentarily out of that internal darkness. It's like opening a window in a stuffy room.
It is hope as a form of psychological relief then.
Right.
It allows him to reconnect with the very thing he is actually sacrificing himself to save.
Precisely. The narrative takeaway is this. These details provide Frodo a glimpse that hope persists, reinforcing the idea that even the smallest, most passive forms of life can preserve light in a world overwhelmingly overshadowed by evil.
If Frodo had only seen ash and ruin, his motivation might become purely destructive, a mechanical need to finish the job.
But seeing the burrs and the green growth reminds him that he is working toward a restorative goal, a world where those colors and sounds can return to dominance. He's not just an executioner, he's a gardener trying to save the garden.
So the journey isn't just about destroying the ring, it's about justifying the existence of everything the ring threatens to destroy.
The resilience of nature in Ithilien mirrors the moral resilience they must find within themselves to keep walking.
And that resilience speaks directly to you, the reader, doesn't it?
I think so. When we face challenges that feel overwhelming, it's those small, irreducible signs of enduring normality or beauty, a quiet moment, an unexpected kindness, that provide the necessary motivation to continue on a difficult moral or physical path.
Tolkien makes a profound argument. The fight is worthwhile because beauty still exists, and it is fighting back passively, stubbornly.
This segment of the journey, therefore, isn't just travel time. It's a thematic deep breath before the final plunge into the true darkness, a final confirmation of what the hobbits are truly fighting for.
Okay, let's transition now, because the moral and physical landscape we just discussed leads us directly to the most controversial character decision in the entire cinematic adaptation.
Here we go.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
The figure of Faramir, who rules this precarious land, and the fallout from Peter Jackson's changes to his character in the film version of The Two Towers.
The controversy is sustained even decades later, and for good reason. The core conflict is that movie Faramir makes a choice that book Faramir never ever would.
Which is?
He takes Frodo and Sam, the ring in tow, to the besieged military outpost of Osgiliath. This decision, seemingly motivated by duty and curiosity, puts the hobbits and the quest at profound and narratively unnecessary risk.
And for book loyalists, for the purists, this was a massive narrative betrayal. It felt like a sacrilege.
It did.
Faramir was meant to be the moral ideal, the superior son to the flawed Boromir. Jackson made him look weak, ambitious, and dangerously fallible.
We really need to clearly contrast these two versions to understand the moral magnitude of the change. They're almost different characters at this point in the story.
The contrast is truly stark. So let's start with the book. Who is Book Faramir?
The book Faramir is presented as an almost idealized moral figure, almost like a man of the Second Age lost in the Third. He is intellectually gifted, morally disciplined, and psychologically resistant to corruption. He has a wisdom that Boromir lacks.
So when he's faced with the temptation of the ring,
He refuses it almost immediately. He says that famous line, "I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway." He understands its nature instinctively, partly because he's seen its effect on his brother, Boromir.
he prioritizes Gondor's long-term safety and the ethical treatment of his prisoners without ever unnecessarily endangering the hobbits. He represents pure, almost innate goodness and resistance to corruption.
He embodies a kind of quiet, classical virtue. But the problem for cinema, I think, is that perfect virtue can often be dramatically inert. There's no tension in it.
Which brings us to the movie Faramir. Jackson's choice was to introduce an element of human, morally complex struggle.
And that's the key word, struggle. Movie Faramir initially makes a mistake, rooted in his very human needs. He is motivated by duty, yes, but also by this desperate desire to gain the approval of his harsh father, Denethor.
And to escape from Boromir's imposing shadow, he says it, a chance for Faramir, captain of Gondor, to show his quality.
Exactly. So by deciding to take the ring to Osgiliath, he makes a calculated error driven by personal ambition and external pressure. He's not thinking about the cosmic good. He's thinking about his father.
The outrage from the core audience was entirely justified if fidelity was the only metric you're using. The integrity of the literary character seemed completely sacrificed.
It did. It felt like a betrayal of Tolkien's intent.
But let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Wasn't Jackson also relying a little on melodrama by forcing the Osgiliath scene? Did he sacrifice some of the quiet dignity of the novel for cheap stakes and a visually dramatic escape sequence with a Nazgul?
That's a fair critique, and it goes to the heart of adaptation. The literary dignity of Book Faramir is palpable, but it doesn't translate easily to a visual medium where internal moral conflict needs some kind of external manifestation.
You need to see the struggle, not just be told about it.
Right. The cinematic choice heightens the stakes precisely because it introduces melodrama. The narrative function of the change is to humanize him and, critically, to make the ring's temptation visceral rather than intellectual.
I see. In the book, Faramir rejects the ring intellectually, based on lore and philosophy and wisdom.
In the movie, he's tempted by it emotionally, driven by trauma and familial insecurity. The ring doesn't offer him power to defeat Sauron. It offers him the love of his father.
That is a much more relatable temptation for an audience.
Exactly. The movie emphasizes that the temptation of the ring represents a constant moral threat for everyone. For Boromir, it was a path to military power. For Faramir, it's offered up as a shortcut to his father's love and approval, a temptation rooted in a universal, deeply human need for validation.
And crucially, the Osgiliath sequence allows the audience to understand the massive military and political importance of the crossroads in Ithilien. If he succeeds, he brings the ultimate weapon to the ultimate strategic point.
Let's talk about that geopolitical reality for a moment. Osgiliath is the ancient capital, and more importantly, it's the critical defensive position on the Anduin River. It's where Gondor is currently struggling and failing to hold the line against Mordor's advances.
It's the front line.
It is. So if Faramir arrives there with a captured weapon that could theoretically turn the tide, the immediate military advantage is astronomical. His decision to take the hobbits there is a calculated risk based on a belief that this desperate war demands desperate measures. That initial mistake sets the stage for his eventual realization.
And this is where the character arc finds its vindication. The film doesn't leave him as an opportunistic failure.
No, it doesn't, and that's key. The drama of Osgiliath is the setup for true heroism. It's only when Faramir sees the tragic truth about Boromir's death, the corruption, the fatal mistake his brother made,
And then sees the immense burden Frodo is carrying when he's attacked by the Nazgul in the city.
but he understands the magnitude of the error he almost committed. He realizes the ring is not a weapon for Gondor, it is a spiritual poison. So he releases them, accepting the political consequences of returning empty-handed to his father.
So his heroism is earned through repentance, realization, and selfless sacrifice of his own ambition, rather than simply being his default setting, as it is in the book.
That's the crux of the justification for the change. The initial flaw, the journey to Osgiliath, allows him to demonstrate genuine, difficult moral growth under pressure.
He becomes a rounded, believable human being who struggled with his own demons, his relationship with Denethor, and chose the path of selfless duty over self-advancement.
And the moral tension is amplified tenfold by the fact that he almost fails. That near failure makes his eventual success, his final choice to let Frodo go, far more impactful and resonant for a modern audience accustomed to flawed heroes.
So it takes the intellectual moral debate of the book and makes it a raw, visceral, emotional experience.
The change isn't just a plot device, it's a fundamental shift in how Tolkien's core theme of temptation is executed for a visually driven, high-stakes medium.
Okay, so if we connect this detailed analysis of the journey through Ithilien, the significance of the crossroads, and this huge controversy surrounding Faramir, we can start to synthesize the central themes Tolkien embeds in this chapter.
Yes, Journey to the Crossroads acts as a nexus point for, I'd say, 4 major philosophical ideas.
Let's revisit the first one, which you mentioned is constantly reinforced by the landscape. Hope amid despair.
This theme is not merely a sentiment, it's a structural element of the narrative. The persistence of the birds, the green growth, the signs of a Gondorian resistance operating in the shadows. These environmental cues prove that even as Frodo moves deeper into the enemy's geopolitical sphere, the world is speaking against total annihilation.
Hope is never fully extinguished.
It is merely hidden, dampened, and must be actively sought out. You have to look for it.
It's the difference between passive optimism, just assuming everything will work out, and active hope, which is the quiet, stubborn certainty that things can be made better, even when all current evidence suggests otherwise.
That's a great way to put it. The surviving nature in Ithilien is tangible evidence of that certainty, and it gives Frodo the reason to endure the ring's constant pressure.
Okay, theme number 2, the one central to the chapter title, choice and consequence.
This is the essence of the crossroads motif writ large. Every interaction with Faramir, with Gollum, and even with the terrain itself is a constant navigation of moral and practical decisions. The narrative emphasizes the immense weight of these choices.
The journey to the crossroads forces both tactical and ethical choices. Frodo must choose between the known path, if one even existed, and the path dictated by his untrustworthy guide, Gollum.
And Faramir must choose between his duty to his father and his recognition of the greater moral burden Frodo carries.
And that's what defines this section. The realization that inaction is also a choice, and that choice always carries a consequence.
Always. Faramir's choice to release Frodo, for example, is not just a kind act. It is a choice with enormous geopolitical consequences. He sacrifices a potential military advantage and his father's esteem for the sake of integrity.
It reinforces the idea that the greatest battles are often internal, defined by what we choose not to do, like take the ring, as much as what we do, like continue the quest.
Exactly. And this naturally transitions us into theme 3, the humanization of morality, which is really the heart of the Faramir analysis we just did.
Right, the nuance of goodness.
This theme allows Tolkien, and by extension the adapter, Peter Jackson, to explore the nuance in goodness. Book Faramir is steadfast. He's an ideal of inherent virtue. Movie Faramir struggles, but ultimately grows into his virtue.
And the core message is profound. Goodness is most remarkable when it is chosen, not when it's just innate or effortless.
It is the difficult, constant work of choosing the higher path, especially when the lower path seems expedient, highly rewarding, or politically advantageous.
Choosing good when the only cost is minor inconvenience is easy.
Anyone can do that.
Choosing good when it means disappointing your family, risking political power, or defying military logic under intense pressure, that is true moral courage.
That's the moral depth of the chapter. And finally, that brings us to theme 4, the weight of legacy. This is Faramir's emotional core, derived significantly from his awareness and grief over Boromir's tragic death.
Right. Boromir's failure, his fall to the ring at Parthgalen, serves as this visceral, dark lesson that Faramir has to internalize.
It's the emotional weight that prevents Faramir, at least in the book, from even considering making the same mistake when the ring is literally handed to him in a moment of desperation.
The legacy burden is immense. Faramir is not just making an abstract moral decision, he is processing grief, deep filial resentment, and the tragic consequences of temptation that destroyed his heroic older brother.
And that burden informs his final correct choice. It gives his character arc an immense psychological depth that extends far beyond just military action or strategy.
And before we leave this section, we should elaborate on one final key element of the chapter, the foreshadowing of Gollum's looming betrayal. This adds a relentless ethical tension to the whole journey.
Absolutely. The presence of Gollum introduces the ultimate ethical crossroad for Frodo. He is forced to act as judge, jury, and temporary jailer for a creature who is simultaneously a victim and a profound danger.
Frodo is constantly forced to interpret Gollum's movements and intentions. The success of his entire journey is made dependent on the guidance of someone Frodo intuitively knows is untrustworthy.
And that internal conflict, the question of how much trust you place in the untrustworthy and when forgiveness becomes foolishness, is the driving conflict for the next several chapters, culminating in the betrayal at Shelob's lair.
And this choice is complicated by Frodo's own moral deterioration under the ring's influence, isn't it?
It is. As he weakens, he begins to see a version of himself in Gollum, the victim of the ring. This ethical debate forces him to decide if he is protecting Gollum for altruistic reasons or for selfish reasons, because Gollum is the only one who knows the path.
So this all proves that Journey to the Crossroads is truly a major turning point, not a narrative pause.
Not at all. It's where all the moral stakes are laid bare.
This Faramir controversy and the resulting character analysis is more than just fodder for fantasy forums. It's a phenomenal case study in narrative strategy. We can take this knowledge and apply it to understand why some stories and characters resonate so much more deeply than others.
We're moving into the meta-analysis now, focusing on the techniques that make a story compelling. The core lesson is clear. What makes a secondary character's journey so significant that changing it sparks decades of debate?
It all comes back to the source material's first point. Flaws increase engagement.
Exactly. Even the most virtuous characters, the archetypes of purity, become infinitely more relatable and interesting when they are allowed to make mistakes or exhibit internal conflict. A character without a flaw is often a character without a journey for the audience to invest in.
If you look at the trajectory of the movie Faramir, his mistake instantly gives him somewhere to go. It opens up a story arc rooted in redemption and self-discovery.
We, the audience, are fundamentally flawed, and we connect instantly with characters who share our imperfection, especially when they manage to rise above it and choose the difficult path.
Right. The perfection of book Faramir is inspirational, perhaps, but the palpable imperfection of movie Faramir is gripping because we genuinely worry about him. We invest in his redemption.
And we feel the relief when he makes the right choice.
But doesn't that raise the question, is there a narrative use for the perfect character, or is the flawed hero always superior?
That's a critical distinction. The perfect character, like Book Faramir, serves a vital function as a moral anchor, a benchmark of what is possible, a moral foil to highlight the failings of others, like his brother Boromir or his father Denethor.
But the flawed character, like movie Faramir, is a better tool for creating tension and teaching moral growth.
And that leads directly to the second lesson. Moral complexity adds tension.
A character who is perfectly moral can feel dramatically flat because there are no genuine choices to be made. You always know what they will do. They'll always do the right thing.
There's no suspense. Narrative interest is created when characters must navigate genuine moral choices under immense pressure, especially when those choices involve significant personal cost, like Faramir wanting to earn his father's respect.
The moment he thinks, maybe I should use this ring to save Gondor and finally be seen as worthy, that's where the tension explodes for the audience. It's an internal civil war.
And tension is the absolute engine of narrative. A crisis is not just an external battle against orcs. It is an internal battle between conflicting desires, duty versus integrity, or ambition versus caution.
By making Faramir struggle, Jackson magnified the moral complexity of the entire ring quest. He made the ring a threat not just to the land, but to the very soul of Gondor's nobility.
He demonstrated that even the noblest of intentions can be corrupted by temptation.
Then there's the inevitable reality that consequences matter.
Yes. Whether characters succeed or fail, the key narrative requirement is that their choices carry undeniable weight and profoundly influence the story and the relationships around them.
If Faramir taking the hobbits to Osgiliath had zero consequences, if they just walked out unharmed, the change would have been narratively meaningless. It would have just been a detour.
But because it directly jeopardizes Frodo's mission, places him under the threat of the Nazgul, and forces Faramir to confront the reality of Boromir's fate, his choice has severe, undeniable, and immediate weight. The stakes are real.
And because of that weight, the final lesson of character development becomes evident. Growth makes arcs satisfying.
A minor mistake, or even a major, costly one when handled correctly, serves as the necessary setup for massive earned character growth. This is the cornerstone of satisfying storytelling.
Faramir's mistake ensures that his eventual heroism, his final realization and selfless decision to relinquish the most powerful weapon in the world, is deeply felt and earned by the audience. We go on that journey with him.
He starts as a son seeking his father's validation, motivated by insecurity, and he ends as a commander choosing the greater good, even when it means sacrificing the greatest military advantage imaginable and accepting failure in his father's eyes.
That moral pivot is a massive achievement in character writing.
The contrast is palpable. What this deep dive shows us is that the quiet movement of the hobbits south through the decaying beauty of Ithilien is paralleled by this huge moral movement in Faramir's soul.
The most successful stories are those that allow their virtuous characters to struggle.
Because that struggle is what makes their eventual victory, or their moral stand, truly resonate with us. It transforms them from archetypes into human beings.
This has been an extensive and detailed deep dive into a chapter that is, as we established at the very beginning, deceptively calm.
Very deceptive.
Journey to the Crossroads is a massive turning point. It confirms the physical progress southward, solidifies that glimmer of hope amidst overwhelming darkness, and ratchets up the ethical tension.
Not just through the ring's power, but through Faramir's deeply human choices, whichever version you prefer.
We learned that Tolkien masterfully used the geopolitical landscape of Ithilien and the ruined monuments to mirror the internal struggle of the characters.
We also saw how a single change in character motivation and adaptation can completely shift the narrative stakes, often by prioritizing flawed human struggle over idealized perfection.
So what's fascinating here is Well, it's the profound realization that sometimes the most important, weighty decisions, those that truly define character, legacy, and consequence, are made not on grand, roaring battlefields surrounded by trumpets and armies.
No, not at all. Instead, those decisions are often made internally, in the shadow of a hidden cave, or at a desolate road junction, or in the internal turmoil of a captain facing a temptation rooted in filial duty. These are the personal crossroads that truly determine moral paths.
That leaves us with a provocative thought for you to consider as you reflect on this journey and the choices the characters faced.
We ask you to reflect on how often we overlook those small, deceptively calm moments in our own lives, the moments where we choose integrity over convenience or choose to let go of ambition for the sake of a higher principle.
Those quiet, internal decisions, far more than any public declaration or grand gesture, dictate our long-term moral paths.
Perhaps understanding why a flawed character like movie Faramir resonates so deeply helps us navigate our own imperfections and find our own hard-earned, quiet heroism.
Okay, thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
Yeah.
We'll see you next.
Me.